Well, Microsoft has been around a few decades and it has a track record which one can fall back on. I'm not saying that Microsoft's going to do very well in the next 2 or 3 decades, but many companies that once they're established and they have competent management and competent products, they do last for a long time. But nothing lasts forever. You know, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is now about 125 years old. None of the companies in the original Dow Jones Industrial Average are still in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. You know, it's changed. The world is always changing. So yeah, you can look at the Dow Jones and say, oh, these are major companies, and they are, but they always have been, and they don't survive.
Yeah. And what do you make out of this Ukraine-Russia war, Jim? What's your view on that? I'm not saying what date will it finish. You know, the start of the war. I mean, I know you have very good macro view, also geopolitical views. Is it something to do with the U.S. this war?
Well, the U.S. is the number one economy in the world and has been for a few decades, but no country that has been number one has stayed number one forever. It always changed. Most world currencies, for instance, which have been at the top, have only lasted 100, 125 years or so. So just time-wise, the U.S. is certainly not at the beginning of its run. And since the U.S. is now the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, and we're getting overextended in many ways, economically, debt-wise, militarily, I can certainly foresee the day when the U.S. is not on top again. I don't know who's going to replace the U.S., certainly not which currency. China looks as though it's going to be the next number one country in the world, but who knows? But I do know that no country and no currency has stayed on top very long, more than 100 years or so.
Okay, now, are you still as bullish on China as you were, Jim, about 5 years ago? I mean, they have a lot of debt, and they have COVID, they have problems now.
You know, that's a major change from the last time we had a problem, 2008. China had a lot of money saved for a rainy day. It started raining. They started spending their savings and helped bail out the world. But now China has a lot of debt too. So I don't know who's going to bail us out next time. North Korea? I doubt it. But China is certainly in less bad shape than most countries. But remember, the United States became the most successful country in the 20th century. But along the way, we had several depressions, many bankruptcies, wars, many problems. We did come out on top and stayed on top for a long time, but even we had a lot of problems as we were rising to the top. China has problems and they will have more problems, but that does not mean they won't rise to the top eventually.
And what's but are you still holding on to your investments in China, or you're buying more?
I have investments in China. I have not sold any. I'm always looking for investments anywhere. If I come across something, whatever it is, I will do my research, and I hope if it's good, I'll buy some.
Okay, and what is your Jim view on, you've had some, last time we talked, you've had some investments in Russia as well, isn't it?
I did have investments in Russia. I mean, nobody has investments in Russia right now. They've all either been confiscated or, the markets are closed, the currencies collapsed. You can't do anything in Russia now. Normally, at a time like this, I would be buying Russia, because I have learned that if you buy a country when it's at war and things are very desperate and collapsed, it's normally a good thing if you have staying power, if you can wait a few years. But right now, as far as I know, it's not possible to buy things in Russia, certainly not for Americans. Maybe somebody, if you're a Uzbekistani or something, you can buy in Russia. But for most people, it's not practical.
Yeah. I think maybe, so do you see any changes post-war? I mean, when Ukraine or Russia gets settled down, do you see any changes happening across the world in terms of economics
or, Well, we're certainly good. This is accelerating are intensifying the inflation moves. We already had inflation before the war. This just makes it worse because Russia and Ukraine supply a lot of agricultural and minerals to the world and energy to the world. So this is just going to make the inflation, which we already had because of too much money printing and too much borrowing and spending, just going to make it worse.
Yeah, and you think of India in these times, or you don't?
Do I think of India?
Yeah.
I always think of India. India is a wonderful, wonderful country. If you can only visit one country, I've said many times, if you can only visit one country in your life, it should be India because it's an astonishing country. I didn't say if you could only invest in one country, it should be India. You know, they have a massive bureaucracy and building up a lot of debt. But no, I'm very keen on India. I don't have investments there at the moment, but I'm always watching.
And are you watching the blockchain space and crypto space also? Do you have
Well, of course, like blockchain is going to be one of the, if not the most important changes in the 21st century. It's going to put a lot of people out of business. I mean, electricity put a lot of people out of business too, and it changed the world. Blockchain is going to be extremely significant. Many banks' back offices will certainly disappear because blockchain is a major, major revolution, and it's going to change everything we know.
What I think I've asked most of my questions, Jim. I think it's pretty 20 minutes, but I've asked most of my questions. One thing, our last thing is, again, is it the time for people to keep the cash? What should they do with the excess cash? They keep it, they wait for it. What do they do?
If you know a lot about something, that's what you should do. If you know a lot about sugar, you might want to invest in sugar. If you know a lot about Apple and you think it's the right price, maybe you should invest in Apple. I mean, you point out that some stocks are down a fair amount here in the last few months. If you know something, I mean, most American stocks are still not down a lot. Hasn't been a real bear market yet. But if you know a company that's going to come out and the price is right, you should be investing in it. Otherwise, put your money in cash and wait. I mean, it's better to earn 1% for a while than to lose 10 or 20% for a while. So just, if you don't have something that you know is the right thing to invest in right now, put your money in cash and wait.
How long do you think it could last, Jim, this route?
The next bear market is going to be the worst in my lifetime. I told you we had a problem in 2008 and 9 because of debt. The debt since then has skyrocketed everywhere. The Japanese, oh my gosh, the English, everybody has built up huge amounts. America has built up huge amounts of debt. So it's got to be a very bad and long economic problem. We've never had such debt in the world as we have now.